The cheap paper cup of daycare coffee was still warm in my hand when the social worker hit play, and my mother's voice filled the room, sweet, practiced, and absolutely damning. I didn't flinch. I just watched my sister's smile fall apart, piece by piece, the way mine had months ago. My name is Waverly. I'm 31, and I work as a paralegal who reads lies for a living, which is probably why it took me so long to admit the biggest liar was the woman who raised me. That morning started like any other. My little girl was buckling a plastic dinosaur into her car seat, humming to herself like the world had never hurt her. I remember thinking, stupidly, that maybe we were finally safe. Then a man in a blazer approached my driver's side window and tapped the glass like he had all the time in the world. He handed me a thick envelope and said, "You've been served," as if he was delivering a menu. I opened it right there in the daycare parking lot, my coffee sloshing onto my wrist, and my stomach went cold. A petition for emergency guardianship filed by my mother, claiming I was unstable, financially reckless and unfit, claiming my daughter was at risk, claiming they needed to step in. I stared at the words until they blurred, then looked up like my mother might be hiding behind the minivan across from me, watching. The petition listed examples, not vague ones, specific ones. It referenced a recent incident involving police at my apartment. My throat tightened. That had been a wellness check 2 nights ago, 2 officers standing in my doorway while my daughter clutched my leg, terrified. I had assumed it was a mistake, a wrong address, a neighbor misunderstanding. But in that envelope, it wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. The next page made my hands shake harder. Evidence of ongoing financial mismanagement, it said, followed by a clean list of money transfers, the ones I'd been making for years. The help I'd sent because my mother always had a reason. A medical bill, a temporary layoff, a loan for my sister's big break, a bridge until things got better. I could practically hear her voice in my ear. This is what good daughters do. And then I saw the line that made me swallow bile. Respondent has been diverting funds from family obligations while pursuing a selfish lifestyle. Selfish. I looked down at my child's dinosaur and felt something inside me finally snap into place, quiet and sharp. My mother wasn't calling me unstable. She was calling me disobedient. I didn't drive home. I drove straight to my office with my daughter's backpack still in the passenger seat, my mind racing so fast I felt lightheaded. I walked in holding that envelope like it was evidence in a murder trial, because in a way, it was. My supervisor stepped out of her office before I even made it to my desk. Her face was careful. "Waverly," she said softly, "HR needs to speak with you." My stomach dropped again. Why? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The receptionist wouldn't meet my eyes. 2 coworkers whispered and went silent the second I turned my head. By the time I sat in the HR chair, I already knew. My mother had expanded the battlefield. She wasn't just coming for my child. She was coming for my reputation, my job, my stability, everything that made me believable. The HR manager slid a printed email across the desk. "We received this anonymous message this morning." Anonymous, sure. It accused me of falsifying legal documents, of stealing client information, of being emotionally volatile. It even included a blurry photo of me outside my apartment, speaking to the police during that wellness check. I recognized the angle, the distance, the way the streetlight hit my hair. Someone had been watching. I kept my voice level. "This is harassment," the HR manager sighed. "We're not accusing you, but we have to investigate. Until then, you'll be placed on administrative leave." Administrative leave. The polite way of saying, "We don't trust you right now." I nodded like I was listening. Like I was calm. Like my heart wasn't banging against my ribs so hard it hurt. Then I walked out, sat in my car, and stared at the steering wheel until my vision cleared. One thought repeated itself, steady as a drumbeat. They timed this. Because that week, I had finally done something my mother couldn't control. I had moved my daughter's savings into a protected account with my name only. I had removed my mother as an emergency contact from everything. I had updated my will. Quiet steps. Legal steps. The kind of steps you take when you've started to realize love shouldn't feel like a leash. And my mother must have felt the leash slipping, so she tightened it the only way she knew how. Publicly. That evening, I got a text in the family group chat from my sister. "Wow, Mom says you're really spiraling. This is embarrassing." Embarrassing. I stared at the message, then at the little typing bubble that appeared under it. My mother was in the chat too, but she didn't type. She never typed when she could let my sister do the stabbing. Instead, my mother sent a voice note. Her tone was sugary, hurt, almost noble. "Sweetheart, please don't make this harder. We're only trying to help. You've been different, and the baby deserves stability." The baby. She said it like my daughter was a shared family asset, like a prize, like a piece on a board. I didn't respond. That was my first act of revenge, and it was smaller than anyone would notice. Silence, because my mother thrived on reaction. If I cried, I was unstable. If I yelled, I was volatile. If I begged, I was weak. So I did none of it. I opened my laptop and pulled my credit report. Then I froze everything. Every bureau, every account, every line of credit. And that's when I found the first real crack in her story. There were 2 personal loans in my name that I had never taken out. Not old ones, recent ones. My hands went numb. My mother hadn't just been draining me with guilt. She had been using my identity like a second wallet. I leaned back, staring at the screen, and felt the room tilt slightly. Somewhere behind me, my daughter babbled at her toys, perfectly unaware that her grandmother had just become something uglier than cruel. A thief. The next day was my mother's favorite stage, a family charity brunch at a country club, the kind with crisp tablecloths and forced smiles, and everyone pretending their blood wasn't poison. I went anyway, not because I wanted to, because I needed to see how far she planned to take it. My sister arrived in a pale dress that looked like it had never seen a budget. She kissed the air near my cheek and whispered, "Try not to ruin today." My mother swept in behind her, all perfume and pearls, arms open like a saint. "Oh, there she is," she announced loudly, drawing eyes. My brave girl. Brave, like I was sick, like I was fragile, like I was a problem she had to manage. Then she did it. The move I'd watched her do my whole life. She guided me toward a table full of relatives and friends, and she started talking before I could even sit. "We're all worried," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound real. "It's been difficult. She's been making impulsive decisions, cutting people off, refusing support." Heads nodded. Sympathetic faces turned toward me like spotlights, and my sister, with that perfect practiced pity, added, "Mom's just trying to protect the baby. You know how Mom is. She sacrifices so much." My mother pressed a hand to her chest, as if the praise physically moved her. I looked around the table. Aunts, cousins, old family friends, people who had watched me grow up, who had eaten food I paid for, who had smiled at me while my mother quietly trained them to see me as difficult. This was the social front, the pylon, the public pressure, the trap where any response would become proof of the story they were telling. So I didn't respond the way they expected. I smiled, small and controlled, and said, "You're right. Let's make sure everything is documented properly." My mother blinked. Documented. I pulled the envelope from my purse, copies of the petition, the anonymous email, the credit report, the loans in my name. I didn't slam them down. I didn't make a scene. I simply placed them on the table like I was laying out place cards. The table went still. My mother's eyes flicked over the papers fast. Too fast. Like she already knew what was there. Then she laughed, light, airy, dismissive. "Oh, sweetheart, you're misunderstanding things." I said, still calm. Maybe. That single word did something to her. Her smile tightened, her gaze sharpened, and right then, as if on cue, a woman I didn't recognize approached our table with a polite professional expression. "Excuse me," she said, looking at me. "Are you Waverly?" I stood slowly. "Yes, I'm with Family Services. I'd like to speak with you privately." My mother inhaled like she was about to cry, and my sister's mouth curled into a little satisfied smirk. That was the micro twist, not the petition. Not the loans, not the HR investigation. The fact that they had gotten someone to show up here, in public, at a charity event, to make me look guilty in front of everyone who mattered to my mother. Reputation, community, shame. They were trying to take me apart in layers. The social worker guided me into a side room with glass doors. Everyone could see us. The whole club could watch me being questioned like I was a criminal. My mother hovered near the doorway, wringing her hands for the audience, whispering to anyone who would listen. My sister leaned into a group of women and started talking with her hands, like she was telling a juicy story. Inside the room, the social worker sat across from me and opened a file. "I'm obligated to ask you some questions," she said gently. "Your mother has expressed concerns." I nodded. "I know." She hesitated. "She says you've been threatening to cut off support, that you've been unstable since the baby arrived, that you've been financially erratic." I held her gaze. "Would it help if I showed you evidence?" She looked surprised. "Yes." I slid my folder across the table and watched her eyes move as she read. The petition, the anonymous email, the identity theft, the timeline. Her face shifted, slowly, from neutral to troubled. Outside the glass, my mother leaned in closer, trying to read the room. Her smile started to falter. The social worker lifted her eyes back to me. "Do you have any reason to believe your mother is doing this for financial gain?" I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "Yes." And then my phone buzzed in my purse. A notification from my email. A forwarding rule had been added, without my permission. My breath caught, because I suddenly understood exactly how my mother had known everything. My bank changes, my HR matters, my court schedule, all of it. Someone had been inside my life. Quietly, constantly. I looked up at the social worker and said, I think I just found how she's been watching me. If you're still here, hit like, share, subscribe, and support the channel. Because what happened next is the part my mother never saw coming. I promise you, this ends with proof. And a silence so loud it changed our whole family. All right, now let me take you back. I think I just found how she's been watching me. The social worker's eyebrows lifted. What do you mean? I pulled my phone out with my good hand and opened the notification again. A forwarding rule. My email quietly sending copies of my messages to an address I didn't recognize, except I did. The name was disguised, but the initials were familiar. My sister's brand name, spelled with an extra letter, the way she always did when the real handle was taken. My mouth went dry. The social worker leaned closer. Can you show me? I turned my screen toward her. The more I scrolled, the worse it got. The rule had been created weeks ago. It wasn't new. It wasn't an accident. It was a leash with a knot I hadn't noticed. Outside the glass, my mother's eyes were hunting. She kept smiling at people, but it had started to shake at the edges. She couldn't hear what we were saying, and for the first time in my life, she looked unsure. The social worker's tone shifted. I need to document this, and I need to ask you a hard question. She paused. Do you feel safe going home? I thought about the police at my door, the anonymous email to my job, the loans in my name, my daughter's little hands tugging at my sleeve every time a stranger knocked. No, I whispered. Not if she still has access. The social worker nodded once, decisive. Then we're not leaving this room until we create a safety plan. In the hallway, my mother was already performing. She's overwhelmed, she told an aunt loudly, dabbing at imaginary tears. I've been begging her to let me help. When the social worker stepped out, my mother turned toward her like a sunflower to the sun. Thank you, she cooed. I know you see what I've been dealing with. The social worker didn't smile back. Ma'am, I need you to step aside. I'll be speaking with you later. My mother blinked, offended by the word later, but she recovered fast. Of course, anything for my granddaughter. My sister drifted closer, phone in hand, eyes sparkling like she wanted footage. Are we done? Because people are asking questions. I met her gaze. Yeah, I said softly. People are. That afternoon, I didn't go back to my apartment. I went to a coworker's place. A quiet woman named Greer who lived in a building with a doorman and cameras that actually worked. My daughter fell asleep on Greer's couch clutching her dinosaur, and I sat at Greer's kitchen table with my laptop open, my heart beating like I'd swallowed a metronome. First, I changed every password, email, banking, cloud storage, everything. Then, I did something I'd been too scared to do for years. I pulled the full login history. My email provider showed timestamps, device types, and approximate locations. There it was, plain as daylight. Multiple logins from a device I didn't recognize, but the location pin sat 20 minutes from my apartment, in the neighborhood where my mother lived. My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. I called my supervisor's assistant, a guy named Beckett who knew more about tech than any paralegal should. He didn't ask for gossip. He didn't ask for details. He just said, screen share, like we were handling a client emergency. Within minutes, he found it, the forwarding address, the filter rules, the recovery email. Then he went quiet for a second and said, Waverly, there's also a connected device still authorized. My skin went cold. What kind of device? A tablet. My mind flashed back to a Christmas years ago, when my mother insisted I let her help set up my email on the family tablet because she was better with that stuff. I remembered her tapping with confidence, telling me it was normal to stay signed in so I wouldn't forget my password. I remembered how grateful I'd felt at the time. Beckett exhaled. I can revoke access, but if you're going to pursue this legally, document everything first. Screenshots, timestamps, IP logs, all of it. Legally. The word tasted like metal. I wasn't a dramatic person. I wasn't the kind of woman who called the police on family. That's what my mother had trained me to believe, that consequences were cruelty. But I looked toward the couch where my daughter slept, her chest rising and falling, peaceful for the first time in days. And I understood something with brutal clarity. If I didn't become the kind of woman who called the police, my mother would become the kind of grandmother who took my child. So I documented everything. And then, still calm, still quiet, I filed a report for identity theft. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with Greer beside me, my folder thicker than my fear. The waiting area smelled like old coffee and panic. My mother sat on the bench like she owned it, hair perfect, lips glossy, hand resting on my sister's knee as if they were the ones protecting a child. When she saw me, her face softened into that familiar fake warmth. Sweetheart, she said, like we were about to shop together. Come sit with us. Let's not do this in public. I didn't stop walking. I didn't even look at her. That was my second act of revenge. No yelling. No scene. Just removing myself from the script she wrote. Inside the hearing room, my mother tried again. She spoke about concern, about instability, about my reckless choices. My sister nodded beside her, wide-eyed, playing innocent support. Then the judge, a tired man named Sterling with a voice like gravel, turned to me. "Ms. Hartley, do you have anything to respond?" I stood. My legs shook, but my voice didn't. "Yes," I said, "I have proof." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Proof of what?" I didn't answer her. I handed my folder to the court clerk. Login histories, forwarding rules, screen captures, time stamps, the loan documents, the police report number. A statement from Beckett, notarized that morning, explaining exactly how the forwarding rule worked and how it allowed someone to monitor my communications without my knowledge. The judge flipped through slowly. His expression didn't change much, but his eyes hardened. My mother's smile started to slide. The social worker spoke next, and that's when the room really shifted. "Your Honor," she said, "I met with the child yesterday. The child appeared safe, bonded, and appropriately cared for. Additionally, I have concerns about the petitioner's motives." My mother snapped. "Concerns? Based on what?" The social worker looked down at her notes. "Based on evidence of surveillance and coercion, and based on a voicemail left on my office line." My mother froze. My sister's head jerked up. "Voicemail?" The social worker nodded. "A caller believed the line was not recording yet. The caller stated, and I'm paraphrasing, that if the agency played along for one hearing, certain financial support would be handled." My mother's face, drained of color, so fast it was almost impressive. The judge's voice went sharp. "Ma'am, did you attempt to influence a state process?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes flicked to my sister, like she was searching for a way out. That's when my sister did something I'll never forget. She whispered, barely audible, "Mom, stop, please. Stop, not deny, not defend. Stop." The judge's gaze moved between them, and I watched him arrive at the same conclusion I had the night before at Greer's kitchen table. This wasn't love. This was a plan. The ruling came down like a door slamming. Petition denied. Temporary protective order granted. No contact unless approved through formal channels. And the judge ordered an investigation into the identity theft claims, including subpoenas for the loan applications and the device access logs. My mother stood up too fast, chair legs scraping. "You're doing this to your own mother," she hissed, finally dropping the performance. I looked at her. Really looked, and felt something strange, not rage, relief, because the truth was out in the open now, where she couldn't twist it in the dark. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said quietly. "I'm just stopping you from doing it to me." In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread across every front like a controlled burn. At home, I moved. New building, new locks, new daycare pickup list with exactly 2 names on it. My daughter started sleeping through the night again. Socially, the country club stopped calling my mother generous. People love a saint until they see the receipts. Practically, the lender's fraud department confirmed the phone number on the loan applications belonged to my mother, not mine. The signature matched hers too. And when my sister lost her sponsorships one by one, she tried to blame me, until the brands asked for the court records. Reputation-wise, my HR investigation ended the moment my supervisor received the judge's order and the documentation. My administrative leave turned into a paid apology, and my supervisor hugged me in the hallway with tears in her eyes, like she finally saw how hard I'd been holding myself together. My father, the quiet man who had spent my entire life hiding behind my mother, called me one night and said, "I didn't know how bad it was." His voice cracked, "But I know now." He didn't ask me to forgive him. He didn't demand. He didn't guilt. He just said, "I'm sorry," like it hurt. Months later, my sister sent one text from a new number. I didn't know she'd go that far. "I'm in therapy. I got a job, I'm trying." I stared at it for a long time, feeling nothing and everything. Then I replied with 2 words, "Stay trying." And here's the small twist I didn't expect, the one that felt almost poetic. When the subpoenas went through, the device logs didn't just show my mother's tablet. They showed the first login had happened from my sister's phone, on the night of my daughter's birth, while I was still in the hospital, exhausted and bleeding and begging my family to show up. That's when they chose to watch me instead. So now, when I sit in my new living room and watch my little girl buckle her dinosaur into a toy stroller, I don't feel guilty for cutting them off. I feel free, because the moment they tried to take my child was the moment I finally took my life back, and all they have left of me now is a court file with their names on it.